What happens when charm meets challenge, and the mask of Hollywood composure begins to crack, right there, under the studio lights, in front of millions watching at home. If you want to see more jaw-dropping celebrity moments and explosive live TV confrontations, smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and drop a comment below right now, because this one's going to pull you right into the fire. The studio was a glass bubble of energy that morning, bright, humming, and deceptively calm. The audience clapped in rhythm as the cameras rolled, and the hosts smiled wide, their voices slick with showtime enthusiasm. And then, he walked in. Robert, seasoned, magnetic, the kind of man who could turn an interview into a scene. His stride had that old Hollywood weight, practiced, deliberate, but just shy of brittle. There was applause, laughter, the rustle of cue cards, and then the exchange of pleasantries that never meant what they sounded like. He leaned back in the chair, suit impeccable, eyes slightly narrowed behind the charm. "Always a pleasure," he said, voice steady. Across from him, Anna, sharp, confident, unafraid to cut through the shine, offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Always. We'll see about that." The audience chuckled. The tone was set. At first, it was smooth. Questions about the new film, about legacy, redemption, the usual dance of celebrity and narrative control. Robert answered with the ease of someone who's mastered deflection. He told a story about set life, about discipline, about how time heals all wounds. The crowd adored it. But then, Anna's next question hung heavier. "You've been open about your past," she said, voice calm but edged. "But some say your comebacks have been protected by privilege, that you've been forgiven more easily than others might be. Do you think that's fair?" A ripple went through the studio audience, half admiration, half discomfort. Robert smiled, but it was the kind of smile that doesn't reach the heart. "That's a complicated question," he said, fingers tightening around his coffee cup. "And maybe not the kind of thing we can solve in a 10-minute TV segment." Anna didn't blink. "Maybe. But it's one people are asking." The air thickened. The laughter faded. Even the hum of the cameras seemed louder. Robert's gaze hardened. "You know," he said softly, "it's funny how people love a redemption story until it makes them uncomfortable. Then suddenly, it's privilege. Maybe we just don't like seeing someone get back up when we preferred them down." A low murmur rolled through the audience. Anna crossed her legs, leaned in. "Or maybe," she replied, "we just expect accountability to be part of redemption. Isn't that fair?" There was no script for what came next. Robert leaned forward now, elbows on his knees, eyes sharp. "Accountability? I've lived it. You think the headlines, the courts, the years of rebuilding, none of that counts? Or do you mean public humiliation on repeat until everyone feels better about themselves?" Anna didn't move. "I think," she said, choosing each word like glass, "that people admire growth. But when growth gets packaged as inspiration while others are still fighting to be heard, it raises questions. That's not about you personally. It's about what Hollywood celebrates." He laughed, a small, bitter sound that cracked through the polite tension. "Everything's personal when you put a face to it," he said. "You just did." The audience was silent now. No laughter. No applause. Just a collective holding of breath. Inside, Robert felt it. The old anger, the instinct to defend, to control the story. But this wasn't a movie set. There were no retakes. Only lights, eyes, and truth pressing in from every side. The producer's hand hovered offstage, signaling to cut for commercial. Too late. The air was electric. Anna's tone softened, but her gaze didn't. "Robert, you've come a long way. Nobody denies that. But do you ever think about how your story might look different if you weren't you?" He stared at her. The audience could feel the shift, the silent storm gathering behind his composure. And then, in that split second before the break, his jaw tightened, voice low but laced with heat. "You know what, Anna? I think sometimes people ask that question not to understand, but to provoke. And congratulations, you got your moment." The screen faded to the commercial bumper, but the energy didn't leave. The audience whispered, the hosts shifted in their seats, and somewhere deep in the control room, someone muttered, "Did that just happen?" But it had. And when they came back from the break, nothing would be the same. The air in the studio had changed. What had once been warm and buzzing now carried an electric chill, the kind that makes everyone sit just a little straighter. The cameras blinked red again. The applause sign flickered, hesitant, as though even the machines weren't sure what came next. "Welcome back," the host in the center said, Her smile stretched just enough to hide the discomfort. "We're here with the one and only Robert Downey Jr." Robert leaned back, arms folded, the picture of composure. But his eyes, sharp, restless, betrayed the weight of what had just happened. Anna sat across from him, unflinching. She wasn't his enemy, not really. But in that moment, under those lights, she was the mirror he didn't want to face. A murmur passed through the live audience, and someone in the front row whispered, "This is wild." Another voice shushed them. The nation was watching, and nobody wanted to blink. The lead host, trying to smooth the tension, jumped in. "So, Robert, before the break, you touched on redemption. I think everyone watching can agree your comeback has been one of the most remarkable in Hollywood. But," she hesitated, "you seemed frustrated just now. Can we talk about that?" Robert gave a polite half-smile, but his tone was clipped. "Frustrated's one word. Tired might be better. You do your work, you keep your head down, and yet every conversation circles back to the same chapter." Anna's gaze stayed steady. "That's because that chapter changed how people saw you." He looked at her, eyes narrowing slightly. "And maybe it's time they read the rest of the book." The audience reacted, a mix of applause and nervous laughter. The tension was theater now, the kind of moment producers dream about but hosts dread. Anna tilted her head, voice even. "You know, Robert, I think what people want is honesty. You talk about moving forward, but sometimes that means facing the uncomfortable questions." He let out a breath through his nose, chuckling without humor. "And sometimes, Anna, that means knowing when a question isn't about honesty, it's about spectacle." Her expression didn't change. "You're on television. Everything here is spectacle." That line hit like a spark in dry grass. The studio audience gasped, and even the camera operator flinched, adjusting the zoom just slightly to catch Robert's reaction. He leaned forward, elbows on the table now, voice lower, quieter, but far more dangerous. "Then maybe we should all remember that. Because when people forget there's a person behind the story, that's when it stops being journalism." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Anna smiled, small, controlled, almost sympathetic. "You're right, but people also forget there's an audience that deserves truth." The words landed between them like glass shattering. One of the co-hosts quickly jumped in, desperate to steer the sinking ship. Let's take a step back for a moment," she said, voice rising over the hush. "Robert, your film deals with second chances. Do you think art imitates life here?" Robert turned to her, his tone softening, but only slightly. "Maybe. ART's about what we wish were true. Life's about what we survive." The audience clapped, unsure whether they were witnessing brilliance or a breakdown. Anna glanced toward him again, quieter now, but still firm. "You survived. And that's inspiring. But survival doesn't mean immunity from accountability." He laughed again, this time, more bitterly. "Accountability? I've faced it in ways most people can't imagine. What you're asking for isn't accountability, Anna. It's penance. Forever. And that's not a conversation, it's a punishment." The silence after that was deafening. Even the control booth froze. And then, from somewhere off camera, a voice, likely a producer, whispered, "Keep rolling." The lead host cleared her throat, desperately forcing a smile. "Well, Robert, your passion clearly shows in everything you do," she said, her tone rehearsed. "And I think everyone here respects your honesty." The audience clapped again, though the rhythm was off, unsure, awkward. But Robert wasn't finished. He turned slightly toward Anna, his eyes steadier now. "You know, I don't mind tough questions. I've earned them. But there's a difference between challenge and condescension. And sometimes, just sometimes, people hide judgment behind curiosity." Anna took that in. For the first time, her expression softened. "Maybe you're right," she said quietly. "Maybe I pushed too hard." Robert's jaw unclenched, but his guard didn't drop. "Maybe I took it too personally." For a long moment, the studio seemed suspended in something human, raw, uneasy, but real. The audience exhaled, sensing the storm breaking. And just when it felt like calm might return, Anna added, almost under her breath, "It's hard not to take things personally when the world has already written your story for you." He looked at her, long and searching. Something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of understanding, or maybe guilt. The applause sign lit up again, and the segment wrapped. The host smiled. The music swelled. But behind the forced cheer, everyone knew something extraordinary had just happened. As the cameras cut to black, Robert leaned toward Anna and said softly, barely audible to the mics. You're good at what you do. But that one hit deep. Anna gave a faint smile. That's the job. He nodded, and for a moment, both of them were just people, tired, exposed, and oddly connected through the chaos. But what neither of them knew was that the moment the clip hit social media, it would explode. And by nightfall, everyone, from Hollywood insiders to late-night hosts, would be talking about that look, that tone, and that exchange. Because the real storm was only just beginning. By evening, the world was on fire. Clips of the interview flooded timelines before the studio crew had even packed up their cameras. The hashtags blazed across screens. #Downey confrontation, #Anna asks, #the view storm. Every second of silence, every twitch of Robert's jaw, every flicker in Anna's expression had been sliced, slowed down, and dissected by millions. The sound bites became ammunition. People love a redemption story until it makes them uncomfortable. It's not accountability, it's penance. Everything on TV is spectacle. Each line looped endlessly, fueling arguments in the digital coliseum. Fans defended, critics dissected, pundits picked sides. What had been 10 minutes of live television had turned into a 24-hour firestorm. Robert sat in his hotel suite, city lights spilling through the tall windows, his phone buzzing relentlessly. Publicists, producers, journalists, everyone wanted a statement. The interview he'd intended as a calm, reflective conversation had mutated into a debate about arrogance, privilege, and the fragility of redemption. He tossed the phone aside, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. His reflection in the window stared back, older, sharper, tired. "You did it again," he muttered. "You let it get to you." There was a knock at the door. His manager entered, phone in hand. "You've seen the numbers, right? The clip hit 12 million views in 6 hours. It's everywhere." "Of course it is," Robert said, voice low. "Nobody cares when you say something thoughtful. They care when you lose your cool." His manager sighed. "They are calling it a meltdown. Some networks want you to go on record. Maybe clarify." He looked up, eyes cold. "Clarify what?" "That I'm human." The manager hesitated. "You could spin it. Say it was passion. Authenticity. People eat that up." Robert gave a dry laugh. "Spin it. I was real for 2 minutes, and now I'm a headline again." Across town, Anna sat alone in her apartment, a single lamp casting long shadows across the room. Her phone buzzed constantly, notifications, messages, interview requests. The world was dissecting her tone, her expressions, her intent. Some called her fearless. Others accused her of disrespect. She scrolled through the comments. She exposed him. She ambushed him. She asked what no one else would dare. She crossed the line. Anna put the phone down and exhaled slowly. She'd been in heated interviews before, but not like this. Not one that felt like it reached inside her and pulled something raw to the surface. Her producer called. "Anna, we need to talk about tomorrow's show. You're trending globally." "I noticed," she said flatly. "They want to know if you'll respond." "To what?" "To him. To the backlash." Anna rubbed her temple. "There's nothing to respond to. I asked questions. That's my job." "Yeah, but they are saying." "I don't care what they are saying," she snapped, then softened. "Sorry. I didn't expect it to go that way." There was a pause on the line. "Nobody did," her producer said gently. "But, Anna, it was real. That's why it's viral." She ended the call and stared out the window. Real. That word echoed in her mind. Because beneath the sparring and the tension, something in Robert's eyes had lingered with her, something she couldn't quite name. Back in the suite, Robert poured a drink he wouldn't finish. The television was on, muted, playing footage of him. The hosts of other shows were already weighing in. Was Robert Downey Jr. out of line? Did Anna Navarro cross a boundary? Who really won the exchange? He switched it off, the silence ringing louder than the noise. His phone buzzed again. A message from an old friend in the industry. "You are honest. Don't regret it." He stared at the words, unread replies stacking beneath them. Somewhere beneath his frustration, a sliver of pride fought to surface. For once, he hadn't hidden behind charm. He'd spoken from the gut. Maybe too much. Maybe too soon. But it had been real. And people weren't used to real. Meanwhile, on social media, reaction videos multiplied like wildfire. Some creators sided with Robert, praising his vulnerability. Others defended Anna, calling her courage a breath of truth. Memes, edits, Think pieces. They filled the feeds, each more dramatic than the last. By midnight, the network released a statement. The View prides itself on fostering open, respectful dialogue. Yesterday's conversation with Robert Downey Jr. was passionate and sincere. We stand by our hosts and our guests. It did nothing to calm the storm. At 2 a.m., Anna opened her phone again and found a trending post. A clip slowed down, zoomed in on Robert's face just as he'd said, "Congratulations, you got your moment." The caption read, the exact second he snapped. She watched it twice, then set the phone down, her stomach sinking. It wasn't the confrontation that haunted her. It was the look in his eyes right after. That flicker of hurt, quickly buried. She whispered to herself, "What if I pushed too far?" But somewhere else, Robert was asking himself the same thing. And as dawn approached, the headlines didn't fade. They sharpened. The confrontation wasn't just a clip anymore. It was a conversation about ego, fame, forgiveness, and the price of being seen. Tomorrow, both of them would return to their stages. Tomorrow, they'd have to face what they'd created. And tomorrow, the story would break wide open. Morning came with the weight of 1,000 opinions. The city was awake, hungry for resolution. Every news outlet ran the story. Morning talk shows opened with it. Podcasts dissected it. Reaction videos were clocking millions of views. The interview wasn't just a trending clip anymore. It had become a cultural moment. At the studio, producers buzzed like bees around a storm. Papers shuffled, earpieces crackled, and the control room glowed with urgency. Anna walked through the corridor with a quiet steadiness, coffee in hand, her mind elsewhere. Every step felt heavier. "Are you sure you're ready?" her producer asked, falling into stride beside her. "I have to be," Anna said softly. "It's not just a story anymore. It's a reflection of something bigger." Robert's people reached out. The producer added carefully. He's agreed to come back. Live. Anna stopped walking. "What?" "They said he wants to clear the air. No pre-questions. No edits." For a second, the world seemed to still. A part of her wanted to refuse, to keep her distance, to let the story fade. But another part of her, the one that lived for truth no matter how uncomfortable, whispered, "Say yes." "Set it up," she said. Hours later, the stage was ready again. The same chairs, the same lights. But this time, the energy was different, not sharp, not defensive. Heavy, human, fragile. The opening music faded. The applause sign flashed. "Welcome back to The View," the host said, voice steadier than her hands. Yesterday's interview with Robert Downey Jr. sparked an intense conversation about fame, redemption, and accountability. Today, he's here to continue that conversation. The audience clapped, softer this time, respectful. Robert walked in, no sunglasses, no entourage, no armor. Just him. He greeted the hosts, shook Anna's hand, and took his seat. There was a long pause before anyone spoke. Finally, Anna broke the silence. "Robert," she began, "I want to start by saying, yesterday's conversation went places neither of us expected. But I also want to thank you for coming back." He nodded. "I owed it. Not just to the show. To myself." The audience held its breath. Anna continued, voice lower. "There's been a lot of noise since then. A lot of opinions. But I think it's only fair to ask, how did it feel for you, seeing the reaction?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, searching for words. "Honestly, it was brutal. But also clarifying. I realized how easy it is for people to mistake emotion for ego. The truth is, I wasn't angry at you. I was angry at myself. Because part of me still thinks I need to defend who I used to be." The honesty in his tone softened the room. Anna nodded slowly. "I get that. My job is to ask hard questions. But sometimes, I forget there's a person behind the answers. Yesterday, I pushed. Too hard, maybe. And that's on me." Robert gave a faint smile. "I've done enough interviews to know when someone's chasing a headline. You weren't. You were chasing truth. And that's rare." The crowd murmured, a low, emotional hum of empathy. The host leaned in. "So, where do we go from here?" Robert looked toward the camera, past the audience, straight through the lens. "Maybe we start listening again. Not just to talk, not to debate, but to understand. Everyone's fighting to be heard, and somewhere along the way, we stopped hearing each other." There was a stillness then, not silence, but the kind of quiet that feels sacred. Anna looked at him, eyes glistening under the lights. That's something worth remembering. Robert smiled. Maybe this, he gestured between them, wasn't a clash. Maybe it was just honesty, live on air. Applause broke, genuine, warm, not for the drama, but for the humanity. The show ended with no theatrics, no slogans. Just two people standing, shaking hands, and exchanging a look that said more than words could. But outside the studio, the storm was still raging, this time in a different tone. Headlines changed. Downey and Navarro reunite, redemption in real time. From conflict to connection, a masterclass in empathy. Clips of the handshake spread faster than the argument ever did. Viewers called it healing, raw, real. That night, Anna scrolled through her feed. For once, the comments weren't just noise. I didn't expect to cry watching a talk show. This felt human again. Real conversations still exist. She smiled, closing the app. Somewhere out there, Robert was probably doing the same. And maybe, she thought, the storm had a purpose. Because sometimes, the clash isn't the story. The calm that follows, that's where the truth lives. The screen fades to black. The sound of the studio applause lingers, then fades into the quiet hum of reflection. And as the final frame appears, your voiceover rises, calm but commanding. What did you think of this moment? Was it redemption, or just reality laid bare? Tell us in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you crave more raw, emotional, unfiltered celebrity moments like this one, make sure you hit subscribe and join the storm. Because on View Storm, the truth doesn't hide under the lights.